What's up, vinyl community? I'm Robert Fithin, and today I want to talk about the colorization of old black and white movies. I mean, rechanneled stereo albums from the 70s. I mean, the Revolver remix. I'm getting so confused. Yeah, the new Giles Martin cash grab comes out next month. A lot of people excited about this, which is great. If this is what you want to spend your money on, well, not this is the original, but if the remix, you're all about it, you're going to buy all 6, you're going to make a video, great, you do you, whatever. I'm not telling you how to spend your money. You worked hard for it, or someone worked hard for it. Spend it how you like. If buying a $5,000 piece of string makes you happy, you go buy that $5,000 piece of string. I don't judge people on how they spend their money. But can we please stop with the reframing about how suddenly the original Revolver is just some absolute unlistenable piece of shit? Can we just calm that down a little bit? It's a little bit precious. You know, when whoever's in charge of the Beatles YouTube put up the first video about Revolver being remixed, I just happened to be online on YouTube at the time, so I was the first comment, and I just put the very innocent comment, great, you've ruined Revolver, next. And it got a lot of replies, like, the 2000 stereo is bad. What's the 2009 the remaster? That's not a remix. Now I can enjoy this album in stereo, the way it was meant. The way it was meant would be the original. Yeah, it's too fucking busy, says somebody else. Because now the Beatles, they're too fucking busy. It's just shit. Original stereo mix was just awful. Brutal. Appalling. Yeah, can we stop with this nonsense? I now can listen to it without a headache. Because the Beatles are Revolver giving people a headache, apparently, these days. Appalling, awful, gives me a headache. My ear is being assaulted when I hear this. That got 358 likes. So apparently there's 358 ears that feel like they've been assaulted now by the Beatles Revolver. I'm not sure if those are each an ear or if it's really just like 150 ears dope, because everybody's got, well, most people have two, aside from Van Gogh. How long I've been waiting for a listenable stereo mix, because again, the original now, unlistenable. The one we all have been listening to, some of us since 1966. I wasn't around quite that early, but yeah, I've been listening to this since 82, and, suddenly unlistenable now. And my favorite comment, spotted the boomer. Inaccurate. You're off by almost a quarter of a century, but close. Not a boomer. Love that comment too, by the way. The okay boomer thing has been around for like almost probably over 8 years at this point. When you say okay boomer, you're supposed to be like saying that the person is old and out of touch, while at the same time you're kind of using an outdated insult. No one's catching the irony on that. Okay. Also, the way that everybody's got to be called by a certain thing now, it's politically incorrect to say this, you can't say that. But ageism, that's fine. That ageism is absolutely acceptable across the board. Even in my case, when it's not even applicable, I'm actually not a boomer. And then methamphetamist says, "Oh, sweet, poor old Robert, listening in only one ear. Just get some help, okay? Methamphetamine. Just get yourself some help before we start critiquing the Beatles. A lot of people, this is their favorite Beatles album. It's probably my second, but." Again, unlistenable, awful, terrible, horrendous, a mistake. People are saying this is a mistake. You know, the big thing that people are saying too, aside from is the headphone thing now. I remember with the earlier remixes, like the Sgt. Pepper and the White Album and all that, the official excuse was it's for the new generation. It's for the youngins. Because they can't stand this 60s panning stuff and vocals on one channel. They don't like that. It's for the youngins. This one's for the children. Exactly, Donnie. Well, they've kind of retired that one, and now apparently the new one that's been put out causing the echo chamber it's all about the headphones, baby. It's got to sound good in the skull candy or it's not going to fly with the young kids. A question for the new generation, for young people. Are you tired of getting thrown under the bus yet for this nonsense, for these cash grabs? Because it's apparently all about you. I know that back when I mentioned this earlier, the colorization of old black and white movies, same stuff. But I was the young generation then, and I'm like, whoa, don't blame this on me. I want to see the original black and white movies the way they were intended. And of course, if you were around then, you probably remember same excuses. Well, they would have made these movies in color but they didn't have the technology back then. Forget about Gone with the Wind and Mystery. Forget that. Yeah, they didn't have the technology back then. Also, forget the fact that people were making black and white movies well into the late 60s by choice, like Psycho and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Clerks. You know, those were done for artistic purposes. They had color readily available, but chose to do movies in black and white. Yeah, let's colorize all these old movies like Casablanca. That went over really well, didn't it? Yeah, try to find a colorized version of that now. So it's kind of like that. It's the same old story over and over again. I remember back in the 70s when, you know, they took all those old monophonic 50s recordings from people like Hank Williams, Elvis Presley, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, and they would electronically rechannel them for stereo because, again, the young people don't want to hear monophonic recordings. Hey, you got two ears. You need two speakers. You need two different channels. Let's make everything sound like it's coming down a corridor with a big echo on it. That's a big improvement. Well, that lasted about 6 years, but unfortunately the market of used records still flooded with these electronically rechanneled for stereo releases that sound like absolute ass. But when they first started coming out, that was the excuse. Young people won't listen to mono. Better rechannel all these and make them sound so much better. Oh my God, mono's unlistenable. What an improvement. And then the 80s came along and it was all, oh, let's go back to mono. Everything's got to be mono again. And the original mono, because suddenly mono sounds great again. So people that have been around long enough, we've been through all of this before, whether it's rechanneled stereo, whether it's colorized movies, it's the same thing. It's always blamed on the same thing. The young people won't do it unless we change it around. And then you get the excuse that, well, they didn't have the technology back then. It was all this gimmicky stereo. That's why the vocals are all on the left, because they didn't really know what they were doing. I mean, people in the 60s were like stupid or something. They were like dumb. I mean, they were like making stereo records with like the drums over here and like, oh my God. Well, let's take a look at that. Let's see, Elvis Presley had a lot of stereo hits in the early 60s. They're in stereo. Vocals are right in the center. Roy Orbison had a great sounding stereo releases in the early 60s, even before the Beatles came along. Vocals are in the center. All the Motown stuff that I can think of from the 60s in stereo, vocals are in the center. Jefferson Airplane's debut, 66, same year as Revolver, vocals are in the center. Doors came out January of 67, missed 66 by a month, vocals are in the center. Bob Dylan had a 1966 double album on both of these records, vocals are in the center. Hey, the Monkees! Even the Monkees from 1966, their debut, vocals are in the center. Mamas and the Papas had their debut in 1966 as well. The Mamas are on one channel, the Papas are on another, but I'm sure that's just a coincidence. I'm sure Lou Adler didn't want to do that. It was all because of, you know, technical limitations at the time. A total coincidence that the Mamas are on one and the Papas are on another. That wasn't artistic intent at all. And then I would love to see these people talk about the Jimi Hendrix experience from 1967 and talk about how all the panning guitars going from ear to ear. Oh, my mind is bleeding. Oh my God, tighten that up, tighten it up. And my question is, if this album sounds so horrible, this Revolver thing here I was holding, this sounds so awful. Why didn't they remix it earlier? Why didn't they remix it in like 1970 or 72 if the technology was the problem? I mean, Neil Young did that. Grateful Dead did that. Why didn't the Beatles do that if this was all just such a big mistake and such a whatever? Or are you saying that George Martin was just incompetent? I just showed you a bunch of releases from the same time in stereo where vocals are not on, their vocals are in the center. Sometimes the guitar's on one channel and the, you know, drums are, but the vocals are all right. So George Martin didn't know what he was doing, right? Jeff Emmerich, all these people, they're just clowns. Clowns. The Beatles, just a bunch of clowns in the studio. Had no idea what they were doing. That's basically what you're saying. Can you stop? Again, if you want the new Revolver, if you want your Beatles to sound like they were mixed like a Hootie and the Blowfish album, great. You do you. I'm going to do me and make a video about please stop saying that the Beatles are absolute trash. I'm so tired of every time something comes out new, the old gets reframed into being just an absolute piece of shit. It's ridiculous. Please stop. This sounds awesome. In fact, this is the German version that Andrew from Parlogram Records site actually said was the best pressing of this ever, so had to get it. And one of the great things about it is the soundstage is so wide. So your stereo panning, even wider. But yeah, Andrew obviously doesn't know what he's talking about either, right? He's just like one of the biggest Beatles experts on the whole thing. Again, not trying to put down the remix, well, I am. It's a cash grab. But you do you. If you want to buy all 6 and make a video like everybody else is going to do, absolutely, you do that. But you don't have to say that the original was horrible and awful and all this bullshit about I can't listen on headphones, whatever the hell that means. You know, take out your skull candy and listen to it like it's supposed to be heard. You might enjoy it a little better. Yeah. Why don't we just fix all the mistakes? Why don't we take that Liberty Bell and make a new one? What's that crack deal in the old? Why don't we fix that Leaning Tower of Pisa and make that straight? Why don't we give some arms to Venus de Milo so she can scratch her ass if she needs to? Why don't we just go ahead and just revisit everything and talk about how the original is just absolute trash? Good times. Because, yeah, I mean, and if you're going to say something, because there's a Kiss record up there, as most people can see. So the new comment when you don't have anything to say about my video is, well, that's the attitude I'd expect for somebody with a Kiss album. Yeah, exactly. Remember the Kiss 78 remixes? I mean, who wouldn't rather hear Strutter 78 over Strutter? What an improvement. How about the Chipmunks version of Firehouse that's on here? That's quite an improvement, too. Yeah, remixes. Always improving. Remember the Def Leppard 84 Bringing on the Heartbreak that was only on the cassette and they made a single of it and people were like, what the hell? Yeah, remixes. They're not, yeah, no, we've been there. A lot of you new to this type of thing and don't really get what's going on. That's fine. I've worked with record labels and execs for over a quarter of a century and this is what's called a cash grab. If it's not, ask yourself this. Why can't you get the outtakes and the demos without buying the remix? So many different configurations of all these Beatles remixes that have come out. Sgt. Pepper, Abbey, all of them. This one, you can never just get the outtakes and demos. You always have to buy the remix. This is actually going to have the original mono from the analog tapes as a bump. Why can't you just get that and the demos? No, you always have to buy the remix, no matter what configuration it is. Isn't that a little suspicious? That's because Giles Martin is over here like, buy the demos and you got to get the remix every time. I'm trying to get paid up in here. I'm gonna get paid up in this motherfucker. That's just how I assume Giles Martin talks. It's like some pimp out of some 70s movie or something like that. Fitting. By the way, if Giles Martin is watching, comment below. What's it like to make your entire living off of convincing the world that your father was incompetent? Does that feel good? Sleep at night okay? I bet this feels good. Let's face it, that's what feels good. The Celine Dion album he produced and the later NXS thing he did, that wasn't really raking in the cash. So yeah, let's rethink the Beatles. Let's fix all the mistakes. It just proved that, 1966 had plenty of stereo albums that were mixed in stereo and had different things going on other than channels. So it's almost like this was an artistic choice to put the vocals on one channel. So we're going to rethink the Beatles. Beatles are trash all of a sudden. George Martin's an idiot all of a sudden. And good times. What amount of conceit do you have to have that kind of opinion? And by the way, I'm not talking to people or about people who just don't like the Beatles. That's fine if you don't like the Beatles. I'm literally married to somebody who doesn't care much for the Beatles, especially this album. It's fine. That's great. That's an opinion. That's your opinion. You don't like the Beatles, you don't like the Beatles. But can we stop with these so-called Beatles fans calling this unlistenable, awful, a piece of trash, okay, boomer, you're a snowflake, I don't know, whatever the word is now. Just let's, can we agree that they're both fine and a remix is, an interesting thing to listen to for a while and then you go back to the original. Can we just do that? And who doesn't want to hear Eleanor? I love that. I just imagine I'm in the studio and somebody runs over and shuts. I mean, those mistakes on here, they're crystallized. They're great. If they are indeed mistakes. I mean, I don't want to listen to the remix. I don't want to hear. I have no idea what they're going to do to Tomorrow Never Knows. I imagine that tom-tom, that rumba thing that Ringo plays, that's going to be mixed way down. I can almost guarantee you that. And it's going to be in the middle. And that's really all we're doing here. We're just basically conventionalizing one of the most experimentally commercial groups of the 60s. That's what we're doing. We're making, like I said, everything sound like a very conventional Hootie and the Blowfish, Goo Goo Dolls, Justin Bieber album. And as far as you're like, I wonder what the new Revolver remix is going to sound like. You want a spoiler alert? I'll tell you what it's going to sound like. Vocals in the middle, slapped back slightly on the 20s. And then you're going to have drums, a drum air of about this much with acoustics on the extremes. There you go. That's what the new remix is going to sound like. It's going to sound like all the other Beatles remixes. Boring, conventional, like a Matchbox 20 album. But you do you. If you want to go buy all 6 of those and make videos, go for it. I am not judging that. What I am judging are these assholes that are going around now calling this an unlistenable piece of shit because it doesn't sound good on their little earbuds. Please stop. And I'm not talking about young people. I'm talking about whoever, because I don't have a problem with young people. Young people are great. Some are assholes, some are great, just like old people. I don't judge people by their age. I wish, there were more people that didn't judge people by their age, but that's the way of the world. Anyway, on my Instagram, I actually wrote a little parody to Taxman. If you want to follow my Instagram, it's Robert Fifth and Vinyl on Instagram. I actually wrote a parody song. You'll have to sing it in your head to Taxman, but I thought I did a pretty good job and made some good points in that little parody I wrote. Again, I don't sing. I'm not going to sing that for you, so you'll just have to look at the lyrics. Once again, Robert Fifth and Vinyl on Instagram if you want to see, if you want to see that. What's one of the, something about, what gives Giles the right to make the call? Mr. Martin. Is it because he lived inside the producer's balls? Integrity, because it's a cash grab. See, I told you I couldn't sing. You'll just have to look up the lyrics. All right, I'm Robert Fifth, and thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking the video if you like the Beatles. If you think they're unlistenable and horrible, just, I don't know, go take that shit somewhere else. Thanks again for watching.